The first shot has been fired in a move that's shaking up the country. The White House has just declared a kind of war on America's own states. The goal? To seize total control over artificial intelligence. Now, this isn't just another policy squabble in Washington. This is the story of the 2026 showdown that will define the future of AI in America. It's a high-stakes battle pitting federal power against local control for the soul of the most transformative technology of our lifetime. What happens next is going to determine who writes the rules for our new reality. So to understand this war, you first have to understand the battlefield. For the last few years, the United States hasn't operated as one nation on AI, but as 50. With the federal government largely sitting on the sidelines, states became the main drivers of AI regulation. By early 2026, a messy and often contradictory web of laws was tangled across the country. Major economic hubs like California, New York, and Colorado all have new compliance rules on the books. Some states passed laws targeting deep fakes in elections. Others focused on algorithmic bias in hiring, or forcing companies to tell you when you're talking to a chatbot instead of a person. While most of these laws were passed with the good intention of protecting people, they've created what the Trump administration keeps calling a fragmented patchwork of state regulations. For businesses, especially startups and small companies, it's been a total nightmare. Can you imagine trying to launch a new AI product, but needing a whole team of lawyers just to figure out 50 different rule books? Each one has its own specific demands and potential fines. The administration argues this mess doesn't just create confusion, it actively smothers innovation, slows down the economy, and gums up interstate commerce. This chaotic landscape, they claim, is a national vulnerability, a self-inflicted wound in the global race for AI dominance, where the stakes couldn't be higher. This is the problem the White House says it's determined to solve, no matter what it takes. The federal government's big move didn't come out of thin air. It was a calculated escalation. The first major signal came on December 11th, 2025, when President Trump issued an executive order titled "Removing Barriers to American Leadership in Artificial Intelligence." This order was way more than just a policy statement. It was a declaration of intent. It directed the Department of Justice to stand up a brand new division, the AI Litigation Task Force. Its only job, according to internal memos, is to challenge and tear down state AI laws in court. Then, on March 20th, 2026, the administration dropped its main weapon, the National Policy Framework for Artificial Intelligence. This document is the blueprint for federal control. Now, it's important to understand this framework isn't law yet. It's a set of powerful recommendations for Congress to turn into actual legislation. But make no mistake, with this release, the White House officially went from complaining about the states to actively planning to replace them. This framework is the core of a coordinated strategy to assert federal control and create a single, unified set of rules for AI across the whole country. The message couldn't be clearer. The era of state-led experiments is over. The federal government is taking charge. So, why the sudden aggressive move? From the White House's point of view, this is all about securing America's future. The administration's mantra is that the U.S. has to win the AI race to guarantee its economic competitiveness and national security. The National Policy Framework is built on 7 key thematic areas to get that done. These include big initiatives like educating an AI-ready workforce and streamlining the permit process for critical infrastructure like data centers. A key pillar of this strategy is what the administration calls a light-touch regulatory approach. This philosophy is critical. Instead of creating a powerful new federal agency just for AI, which could become a bureaucratic nightmare, the framework suggests relying on existing sector-specific regulators. The SEC would handle AI's impact on financial markets. The FCC would deal with communications, and so on. The goal is to fire up innovation and limit the regulatory burdens that could slow down American companies. The framework also puts a heavy emphasis on protecting free speech by trying to stop government coercion of tech platforms on content. It also respects intellectual property by mostly leaving complicated copyright issues for the courts and the market to sort out. But the number one priority, the one that underpins everything else, is establishing American AI dominance. And to do that, the administration argues, it has to clear the path for innovators by bulldozing what it sees as 50 roadblocks built by the states. This isn't just about making business easier. It's being framed as a matter of national survival and global leadership. Of course, the states tell a completely different story. They didn't just cook up these laws for fun. For years, as AI technology advanced at a dizzying pace, Congress was mostly missing in action. States and local governments found themselves on the front lines, dealing with the real-world fallout. They were responding to direct pleas from their own citizens for protection. Worries about algorithmic bias in job applications, loan decisions, and even criminal justice weren't just theoretical. They were causing real harm to real people. The explosion of convincing deepfakes was threatening not just personal reputations, but the very integrity of local elections. And the total lack of transparency around data collection for training AI models was setting off serious privacy alarms. In this federal vacuum, states argued they had a constitutional duty to step in, using their traditional police powers to protect the health, safety, and welfare of their people. Lawmakers in places like Colorado, California, and Texas weren't trying to kill an industry. They were trying to build guardrails. They saw themselves as laboratories of democracy, experimenting with different approaches to figure out what actually works. From their perspective, the federal government dropped the ball. And now, after states have done all the hard legislative work, D.C. wants to swoop in, erase their efforts, and impose a one-size-fits-all solution that they fear will put corporate profits ahead of consumer protection. This brings us to the absolute heart of the showdown: federal preemption. It's a legal term, but its implications are huge. The White House framework proposes that any new federal AI law should explicitly preempt or override state laws that place undue burdens on AI development and use. Specifically, it wants to block states from regulating the development of AI models and from holding AI developers liable for how other people misuse their tech. Think about that for a second. This is a lot like the intense debate we've had for decades over Section 230 for social media, which mostly shields platforms from liability for what their users post. The administration wants to create a similar safe harbor for AI developers, arguing it's essential for them to take risks and innovate without the constant fear of being sued into oblivion. But the framework isn't a complete federal takeover. It includes specific carve-outs, leaving states with significant power in certain areas. States would still be able to enforce their general laws to prevent fraud and protect consumers. They'd keep the power to pass laws specifically protecting children online, a major focus of the framework. And they'd continue to control local stuff, like zoning for data centers and regulating their own government's use of AI. And right there is the central, explosive legal question of this whole fight. Where do you draw the line between regulating, quote, AI development, which would be federal, and enforcing, quote, general consumer protection, which would stay with the states? If a state passes a law requiring AI models to be tested for bias, is that a regulation on development or a consumer protection measure? This ambiguity isn't an accident. It's the future battleground. If this framework becomes law, this single question will unleash a tidal wave of lawsuits that could drag on for years, with the very definition of AI regulation hanging in the balance. A framework, no matter how ambitious, is just a piece of paper until Congress acts. And that path through Congress is a political minefield. The Trump administration isn't going into this fight alone. House Republican leadership is already signaling its commitment to turning the framework into law. In the Senate, key figures like Senator Marsha Blackburn have already put forward companion legislation that translates the administration's preemption goals into legal text. But the opposition is just as organized and just as dug in. On the very same day the White House released its framework, a group of House Democrats led by Representative Don Beyer reportedly introduced a bill with a defiant title, the Guardrails Act. This legislation would aim to repeal the president's December executive order and explicitly block any attempt to stop states from regulating AI. Their argument is that the White House wants to kill responsible state safety rules without offering any real federal protections to replace them, leaving the public exposed to the growing risks of unchecked AI. This all sets the stage for a brutal legislative battle, and history isn't on the administration's side. In recent years, Congress has repeatedly shot down proposals for broad federal preemption of state AI laws. Making things even tougher is the razor-thin Republican majority in the House. With a margin that small, any significant Democratic opposition could derail the administration's entire plan, forcing massive compromises or leading to a complete stalemate. The political reality is that a total federal victory is anything but guaranteed. So, what does all this high-level political and legal warfare mean for businesses and for you right now? The biggest takeaway is that nothing has changed yet. The framework is not a law. Until Congress actually passes a preemption bill, all existing state AI laws are still in full effect. For any company building or using AI in the United States, the immediate reality is that the complicated patchwork of state rules is still the map you have to follow. The future is just one big question mark. The delayed release of a key Commerce Department evaluation of state laws, which was due by March 11th, 2026, just adds another layer of fog to the administration's plans. Plus, it's really unlikely the framework's 7 priorities will move forward as one giant bill. Instead, we should expect them to be broken up and tucked into various other pieces of legislation, forcing everyone to track multiple fights across different congressional committees at the same time. And for huge issues like intellectual property and content moderation, where the framework basically punts to the courts, the path forward will be shaped by lawsuits, not clear policy. We're all in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the first real shots of this war to be fired. We are standing at a historic crossroads. The ultimate showdown of 2026 will set the fundamental direction of artificial intelligence in America. This conflict forces us to ask some profound questions about our system of government and what kind of future we want to build. If the federal framework wins, will it kick off a new golden age of American innovation, creating a streamlined and powerful national AI ecosystem that leaves global competitors in the dust? Or will that victory come at the cost of consumer safety, creating a system with fewer protections and less accountability, where corporate interests are put above the rights of everyday people? On the other hand, what if the states win this fight? If they successfully beat back the federal push for preemption, will it preserve a vibrant system of democratic experimentation where local governments can shape rules to their own community's needs and values? Or will it lock in the chaotic and burdensome patchwork, ultimately slowing down American progress, giving up our technological leadership, and making the nation weaker on the world stage? There are no easy answers here. Both sides truly believe they're fighting for the future of the country. One path promises unity and strength through central control. The other promises safety and responsiveness through local power. The choice between them will have consequences that we'll feel for generations. This is a debate that affects every single one of us. So now we want to ask you, who do you think should control the future of AI? Should it be a single national framework from the federal government, or should the power stay with the states? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve on the biggest stories shaping our technological future, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell.